Well, what Lyndall said was absolutely right. You know, um, my mom was a giver. She really didn't know how to take, or if she did, she just didn't do it. I really want to thank everyone for being here today, and I know some of you came from far away and really took the time and effort. For years, my mom said, well, I'd really like for Lyndall to speak at my funeral, and you don't worry about it. I know you'll be torn up that day. And me, in my usual pretentious fashion, said, nah, it's not going to be a big deal. But I am feeling it. I'll tell you, I really am feeling it. And it's been a very surreal week and a half, you know, of ins and outs, of questioning my own judgments on things, of checking in with my wife Astrid about, you know, what did I just say? What did you say? You know, just really out in orbit. And the reason for that's very simple. I love my mom. I loved her a great deal, and we were close, and we spent much time together. Every day I checked in with her. Yesterday, I decided, well, it'd probably be smart for me just to go to work, and I did. Just thinking, well, I'll get out of it for a minute, you know. But on the way, I was like, oh, I need to call Mom. And you know what I'm thinking? You know, my conscious mind had to come in and say, wait a minute, we're now in a new way, not in the old way. So it was really, it's just been surreal. But one thing that really made my mom's life so much better, and certainly informed and made mine just terrific, is that there's so much family. And that's on both sides, by the way. And it's very appropriate that today we are here at the monument that was erected initially by my Aunt June, who, along with my Uncle Caesar on the Sebastian side, owned Hillcrest Cemetery many years ago. And of course, this is where my dad's buried. And for those of you who attended that funeral, it was really something. You know, 21 gun salute, just very majestic, something he would have wanted and something she was very proud of. So, you know, to know my mom was to love her, and to say that she loved everyone was an understatement. I mean, she really loved everyone. You know, that word's tossed around a lot, and, you know, just language is so easy just to say, but, you know, when you think about the hours of phone conversations, of empathetic talks, of trying to relate to other people, of trying to console people, of constantly being in touch with her siblings. You know, she was the glue for many of her siblings. Not my words, theirs. She was. And I'm so happy that the two of you can be here today, by the way, because the vanishing of her siblings was a tremendous hurt for my mom, because she grew up with that. She had to share something I don't know about. I'll admit it, you know, because I didn't grow up that way. I didn't have to share. I didn't have to vie for attention. I was pretty much given that. Not only given it by, you know, growing up pretty much alone, but also from parents who were very willing to give it, which is not always the case. And my mom would often talk about people who didn't have it so fortunate. She was very strong in her faith, as Lyndall mentioned. And some of my fondest memories are from East Hickman Baptist Church, the first church that we attended, which is still out Tates Creek Road, and you can visit if you ever care to. If you do, you'll see it's a time capsule. It doesn't change. You'll still hear all the old hymns. And it was a marvelous place to grow up with the hymns, and with the silence, and with the nobody's bothering me, and with the lack of cell phones, and with the no dings. You could have moments of reverence where you could really get in touch with yourself. And my mom loved that. She loved the meditative aspect of life, even though she gave so much and talked to so many people and helped them in so many ways. She loved being alone. Many times when I check in with her at the end of a day, she would say, I'm so happy. I've been here scrapbooking. I've been watching Netflix, and I haven't talked to anybody. You know? And of course, when she did talk to people, I would usually hear the other end of it. So in other words, the person would come and download that stuff to her, and then I'd talk to her and she'd download it to me, and I'd like, I don't want to hear all that, you know. But I probably know more about most of you than you know. And if you went into her place over there, you'd see, as Susan can attest, she has boxes and boxes labeled of family members. Stuff stretching back decades. You know, I was telling Lisa, who was kind enough to fly in, her dad, she has stuff going back on Billy to the 50s. Organized. She really cared about people. It meant a lot to her to be able to connect and to stay in touch and to keep things together. She was an empathetic person. She just did not know how to not give. And for those of you who were kind enough to reach out, you know, while she was in hospital, which was very sudden, by the way, you know, and say, hey, we want to come see her. We want to talk to her. We want to, you know, please don't feel like our reluctance to put you on the phone with her or anything was a slight. It wasn't. That was her request. It was her request because she knew that if people came, she couldn't help but give of herself, of the very limited, almost gone energy that she had, because she didn't know how to not give. And so we didn't want that for her, and we were very happy that she was aware enough to ask that not happen. And so, you know, at the end, at the hospital, which started as a I can't breathe too well, then to urgent treatment, then to the ER, and finally in the ICU, you know, she just felt like, well, I'm not sure if this is the end, but it kind of feels like it. Many of you may know that some years ago she had a miraculous TAVR procedure for her heart. If that procedure had not worked, or if it was not available at the time as it was, she would have been gone then. I mean, she knew that her years that she had after that were borrowed. They were borrowed, and they were certainly given as a gift. And she helped people with those years and that time. When we went in hospital, the doctor there had mentioned that we might even do a TAVR within the TAVR that she'd had. An operation she probably wouldn't have made it through. But she was willing to try, and so we did some procedures, but eventually it became clear that she just needed to go. She wanted to go, and the pain was such from her breathing the night before, it was so intense, so much, that I told her, you know, let's get you something good. And so they brought in the drugs, and she was spinning, and I was holding her hand, and she was squeezing it for 2 days straight. And Susan was on the other side holding her hand, and Linda was holding her feet, and, you know, and she was laughing her ass off. And it was great, you know, and she was high as a kite. You know, it was a cocktail, it was Dilaudid, it was, you know, fentanyl, it was Oxy, I think, at the end. You know, it was a powerful thing, you know, and so she wanted that at the end, and she was ready to let go. She knew she had given her all. And the lesson for me is, you know, to be more like that. It's hard to be like that. As if most of you are like me, it's all about me. And we wanted to be about me. For my mom, somehow, miraculously, it wasn't about her. And it's something I still honestly wrestle with.
Others. Jimmy, yeah. Others, always others.
It really was. It really was. By the way, we had put together this registry, which we would like for you all to sign, because I know some people won't be at the restaurant later. But in this registry, probably, I don't know, year and a half ago, Mom said, hey, why don't you take me to Waffle House? She had never been to Waffle House. All these years, she'd never been to Waffle House. And I said, sure, let's go to Waffle House. Well, this is the picture of her in Waffle House with the Waffle House hat. And so some of the people there were like, you've never been to Waffle House? Have you never been to Waffle House? Well, you must be a Waffle House virgin. And they went on and on the whole time we were eating, Waffle House virgin, Waffle House virgin. So, you know, I put that in there because that really is my mom. That really was her way of being and her way of relating to people through humor and through fun and, you know, not taking it all so seriously. You know, it wasn't a grim affair for her. Much of that was because she loved so much, and a lot of it was because her faith was great. Her faith was great, and it matured as time went on. You know, it started when she was young, and it moved through to East Hickman Baptist Church. Later, after we moved from that church to Southland in the old days, the Wayne Smith Southland, you know, we were there for a long time. And at some point she decided, you know, wherever I am is church. I don't need the brick and mortar. Wherever I am is church. She had consolation from many things, her music, her books. You know, it might surprise some of you how eclectic my mom was. I mean, just in December, you know, I'd set her up with all these frilly foreign films, you know, that I'd say, here, try this out. And we wound up watching the 6.5-hour War and Peace from the 60s, the Russian film, you know. And she was like, wow, this is really fascinating. She was into it. We had dialogue about it, you know, but, you know, she wouldn't tell people that. She never wanted to come off as pretentious in any way. But she really was much more knowledgeable than she let on. But the reason she seemed provincial, perhaps, was she never talked about herself. It was always about other people. And I think for any of you here who knew her well, you would certainly agree. You know, concerning my mom and dad both, I really have no complaints. You know, when my dad went, you know, it was cancer diagnosis. 2 months later, he's gone. Hospice came in, morphine. He was high as a kite. So much so that when he went, I was surprised. He died in his sleep. He couldn't ask for much better, honestly. My mom was the same way. She had a terrific life. She gave a lot. A lot of people loved her. And I was telling Susan, I just really can't think of a better way it could happen. Astrid, my wife, and I, for the last 10 years, we've been living in constant fear because she's so wobbly and unstable that we're going to walk over and find her laying on the floor. She wasn't able to hit med alert or to call us or something like that. Or I'd be away on a trip and, you know, she'd be there for 6 days or something. We were terrified about that. And we were terrified about her falling when we were out someplace. So, and she was terrified. She was terrified. And frankly, it was getting to the point that she really couldn't even get out to go to lunch with us. We bring food to her. And she felt like I'm becoming so much of an imposition on people. Of course, people who are around her would say, no, you're not an imposition at all. Don't worry about it. It's all great. However, she felt that. It's the issue of losing your independence. I mean, she was terrified of it. And she was scared about it, but at the same time, she knew that was the reality of things. Now, I don't want you all to get the wrong idea. My mom could certainly slather disapproval if she needed to. And many times you might see that, mostly in her face. She wouldn't say it. But for those of you familiar with Mama's family, for those of you familiar with Vicki Lawrence, she could make the face when she didn't like what you were doing. And you knew right away. And fortunately, that was a face that she had to use on my dad a lot. For those of you who knew my dad, I'm sure it'll come as no surprise, but my dad was one of the most interesting people I've ever met. I have to say, you know, I don't know, you know, it was just weird, and you know, and she put up with it. I don't know how, but you know, the thing is she was such a giving person. I've thought about this often. You know, for those on the Moore side, you must understand the Sebastian side's a little different. Okay. There's something genetically going on the Sebastian side that lends to artistry and anxiety and depression and issues that may not be as heavy on the other side. These issues were brought to bear greatly with my dad, not only from his genetics, but also because his upbringing was horrendous. I mean, toward the end, he shared with me things that, frankly, I wouldn't repeat. It was horrible. But that made him into a bundle of neuroses. And it was something that my mom found she could deal with for 48 years. It was amazing. A lot of people would see us reacting with each other. You know, they'd see me sort of almost being disrespectful to my dad in some ways. They'd say, oh, why are you doing that? Well, you know, the truth is, my dad loved that. He would laugh about it, you know, because my dad was bluster. He loved going on, you know, and anything that came about, it was always no, and so, my mom learned to deal with that somehow. Somehow her ability to give so much, and him, I don't even know what he was doing, but somehow that worked. I don't know how, but it did for a long time. And, and she would roll her eyes constantly. My dad would meet people out at restaurants and the jokes would come in. The horse that goes into a bar, why the long face? The wheelbarrows in China, they push them, the cow with no legs is ground beef. All these horrible jokes, man. Or the books he'd read that he was so eclectic with, Under the Bleachers by I.C. Butts, or Down the Yellow River by I.P. Freely. You remember that one, Sonny. I know you remember that one. Yeah, they're just horrible. Or jokes with double entendres. Like I had my eye on a seat and someone sat on it. Now I just have one eye. Right? Or my personal favorite, she was just the farmer's daughter, but all the horsemen knew her. This was the type of nonsense that my mom endured for 48 years, people. I don't know if you realize, those who came to the house. It really was something. It was something to behold growing up. It really was. So, when I found later on, I'm kind of different. What's going on? Some of my family members, I love them, but I don't relate as well. And then I started, kind of looking at it and saying, well, I wonder why. Look at the background, right? And it's just the way it was. My dad needed such a woman. He needed such a woman. There was something unconscious in my mom that I feel was drawn to that. It really was. I think, for those who knew them both, you might agree with that. My dad was also just full of hyperbole. One of my personal favorites, he met up at Wheeler's all the time. My mom would send him up there because they had a little crew of old men that were basically, well off, but wanted to talk how impoverished they were and how bad their wives were and all that sort of thing. Well, he had been telling Joe B. Hall and Max Covenant, all these old guys for years, that he'd had this scar on his hip that was from fighting a Jap on Iwo Jima. Of course, I knew personally that my dad was a radio operator, never left the States. He was in the military, of course. Well, imagine how mad he was when my mom told Joe B. that it wasn't any Jap sword that cut my dad. It was an emergency appendectomy. He really was mad about that because he was, I hope you're getting a picture of the what was really going on. But, it all worked out fine. What we came to call far side dynamic, which I'm sure all of you on both sides can relate to, right? But, my dad, like I said, was all bluster. We used to have a window in the second story over at Melrose, and I'd throw stuff out of it. There was a hole in the screen. Well, I threw this banana peel out this one day. Well, my dad happened to be standing down there. I didn't know he was down there. Hit him right in the head. So here, the back door slams. He runs in. Jenny! He hit me with a banana peel! And my mom said it should have been me. Just crazy stuff like that, Or we'd be out at a restaurant, some waitress, he'd say, oh, I didn't know there was a beauty contest around here. And the waitress would be like, just silly stuff. One of the greatest acts of love that my mom did for my dad, some of you might know, I don't know, was as he, as the years went on and he was mellowing a little bit, but, his anxieties were still there and still increasing. Well, she had been in conference with Dr. Gillum, his physician, for many years, and, she said, I just wish there was something I could do for him. He's so miserable. He can't get out of his head. Sometimes he can't sleep. He just is locked up. He just can't do anything, So, for the next 10 years or so, a lot of people are like, what's with Charlie? He seems like he's mellowed out. Maybe it's age. We're moving home and retiring, and, he just seems like a different person than he used to be, and we're so happy about it. He seems to have found himself, or maybe he found Jesus or something, He had Jesus, but maybe he found Jesus again. Of course, most people didn't know it was the Prozac that she was dosing him with and his coffee every morning, which, of course, chilled him out to no end. So you'd think you were, at Woodstock or something with it. It was just amazing, Yeah, so much of, Mom's inspiration came from her family. And I know you all, I don't want to make it sound like Mom gave everything, other people didn't give anything. It's just not real. It's not true. you all gave a tremendous amount, and she had inspiration from many other places. You know, in the late 60s, she had found Roy Masters, who had a radio program for many years, books and all of it, but you know, he taught meditation, and my mom began to meditate. And when I was growing up, you know, we meditated together constantly. You know, we listened to Roy Masters' program. We listened to Night Sounds, which was a wonderful program with Bill Pierce for years. It was very spiritual and reverent, and it was so deep, you know, and so, you know, amidst all the chaos, you know, Mom had this stillness that she was able to muster or bring to the household, a household that otherwise probably would have had a lot more trouble, lot more trouble. My dad was never physical minded, thankfully. It was all bluster, but sometimes that can be worse than physical, I think.
Yes.
Mind games, gaslighting, all of it, you know. So you know, I'm really thankful she had the fortitude to do that. She came at our dance studio. You know, I had my Tai Chi class there for many years. She came and started doing Tai Chi. She had been doing that for 8 years at least. And she said, you know, I'd really like to test out of my first rank. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, and I better pass. And I said, okay, well, let's do it. You know, and I did it, and she did fine, and she passed. And for some of you who saw what I posted on Facebook, one of the pictures was her receiving her Tai Chi rank many years ago. She's, you know, she had these depths to her. I mean, you know, last month, you know, I had given her complete works of Flannery O'Connor. She read right through it. She loved it, you know, and we talked about that. J. Vernon McGee, she loved these things, and they were just so meaningful to her. Most meaningful of all, though, probably were the reunions. You know, I'd be remiss not to mention them. The reunions that were for many years down at Forest and Ola's, down in Garrett County, later moved to Mom's condo and other places, Susan and Lyndall's. Gatherings of family that were so dear to her and brought people together in good and meaningful ways. And so I'll miss those. I'll miss the bourbon balls. If you never had our bourbon balls, they were strong. They, you know, yeah, it was funny because, see, you have to understand, my dad wouldn't touch liquor at all due to his upbringing and things that had happened. So there wasn't any liquor in the house. So when it came to making bourbon balls, you know, Mom trying to find 100 proof Old Fitz, you know, she'd send my dad for it, but he didn't want to go and be seen buying liquor. So she'd have to find it some other way, and she'd get it and bring a big bottle back. I don't like the liquor in the house, you know, but she'd be on a double boiler making bourbon balls. And then the family would come over and have a nice chat for 3 or 4 hours. You know what I mean? Some people left, you know, it might have been over the limit, actually. And then there's the country ham and biscuits that are, of course, legendary. I'll miss those. I did want to say, for those of you who may not be thinking of attending Ramsey's after this, because we are meeting up there, Susan has kindly reserved a room. We do have the last of Mom's beer cheese. So I definitely want you two to have at least one of them. But those will be there, and Astrid had the idea of possibly doing a quiz show. So you bet we may do a quiz show. Maybe a raffle. We'll see. Yeah, you know, I'll never have experiences like my mom's. None of us will. It's a couple of years ago, she got this idea in her head. You know, I really want to go ahead and prepare a video for my funeral. And I said, okay, what are you talking about? You know, like you talking for a few minutes, something like that. She said, no, I want a compilation of all the things that mean the most to me. And she's wound up sending me all these things, Sandy Patty songs, things that go on forever. So we whittled, originally this thing was 3 hours. And so we whittled it all down to a little over an hour. And, you know, my initial reaction was what my dad would have said. Are you nuts? I can see some of your faces right now when I said it. An hour. You know, so. But, you know, the thing is, she wanted to share that with people. So gradually, which was often the case with my mom, we introduced the idea that, hey, maybe we could just have it online and you all could go see it if you want to. Which it is online, and many of you, I think, received it through Susan and Susan. By the way, my two Susans, Susan Ormsby on the Moore side, Susan Searp on the Sebastian side, they, of course, have been the ones that have been sort of dealing with information on both sides. So I'd like to personally thank you both for doing that. It really has taken a lot off of just what would have otherwise been. The other thing about Mom is, you'd think that because she was so sweet and had that Aunt B quality, that, you know, she might bring you inside and bake in apple pie or something. And that was true. However, a lot of people didn't realize her penchant for serial killers. She went through all 8 seasons of Dexter in like 2 weeks. It was crazy. I mean, you know, it's unreal. You know, she loved it. And Longmire, you know, these, I mean, very violent shows. So, you know, I won't guess on whatever latent tendencies might have been there, but it was interesting. I gave her, there were 2 books, The Alienist and Angel of Darkness, which are 2 of my favorite serial killer books that I gave to her. She read them twice each. You know what I mean? I mean, it was really, so, you know, there is this sweet thing, and then there's something else there, you know, it really is. But it is what it is. I love my mom. I love her entirely, you know. It isn't like I love a part of her. I love all of her, you know. And, you know, and also I must make an apology for any unreturned texts, phone calls, etc. They came in a tidal wave there, and I couldn't deal with it, honestly. And so if anybody got left out, or if something was off with the obit, or, you know, please give us all latitude on it. Lastly, I really want to thank my wife, Astrid. You know, it's not like I was dealing with my mom the last 10 years with all of her doctor's visits and pains and issues and little, you know, errands and things of that nature. No, she was right there with me every time. You know, she went with me, and my mom loved her. She loved you. She loved you. She really loved you, you know. And I know you loved her too. So I'm so grateful that you're here today and that you were a big part of her life. I really am. You know, it would be remiss and probably criminal to not mention Susan and Lyndall. They wouldn't want me to mention them probably, because they're very modest people and they don't like publicity and they don't like to know what they're doing, you know, people to know. But the truth is, without their generosity and patronage and time and effort and love, my mom would have died a lot sooner. It's the truth. And she would have been a lot less comfortable, and she probably would have been dependent much more than she was. And why are they doing it? It's part of their philosophy and their love. That's it. You know, it isn't like, oh, we want something in return. No, it's just, this is where we are. This is what we want. You know, we love her, and this is what we want to do. And so I think, I don't know how to thank you both. There isn't anything, you know. I mean, all you can do with this stuff is pay it forward, especially for those who are gone. So, yeah, I would do a lot of recitation to Mom, poetry, etc. And this last piece is short, which I'm sure you'll be happy to know, but I think poignant. It's the ending of King Lear, and she, for some reason, out of all the plays, she really loved King Lear. I mean, maybe it was the big production of it. I don't know what it was. But here it is. The weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. The oldest hath borne most. We who are young will never see so much, nor live so long. Thank you all for being here today. I love you.
Thank you, kid. Thank you.
Please, every one of you here, try to make it to Ramsey.